But right after President Zelensky thanks President Trump for his great support in the area of defense, President Trump then says, and we'll go to the next excerpt, "I want you to do us a favor, though, because our country has been through a lot and Ukraine knows a lot about it. I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine. They say CrowdStrike. I guess you have one of your wealthy people. The server, they say Ukraine has it." And then at the end of the paragraph, he says, "Whatever you can do, it's very important that you do it if that's possible." Now, Mr. Kent, you've testified a little bit about how important this White House meeting was to President Zelensky. How would you expect a new Ukrainian president to interpret a request for a favor from the President of the United States?
I cannot interpret the mind of President Zelensky other than to say that it was very clear that what they were hoping to get out of this meeting was a date and a confirmation that he could come to Washington.
Obviously, you can't put yourself in the mind, but if the Ukrainian president, for a country that's so dependent on the United States for all things, including military assistance, is requested to do a favor, how do you think the Ukrainians would interpret that?
Well, if you go further into the call record as part of this, and we don't have it on screen, but to the best of my recollection, reading it after it was released on September 25th, President Zelensky went into having whatever your problems were, that was the old team, I've got a new team, and we will do whatever is appropriate and be transparent and honest about it. I don't remember the exact words, but he was trying to be, in his own words and response, be responsive to conduct the business of Ukrainian government in a transparent and honest manner.
Now, when he talks about this CrowdStrike and the server, what do you understand this to be a reference to?
To be honest, I had not heard of CrowdStrike until I read this transcript on September 25th.
Do you now understand what it relates to?
I understand it has to do with the story that there's a server with missing emails. I also understand that one of the owners of CrowdStrike is a Russian American. I'm not aware of any Ukrainian connection to the company.
Now, are you aware that this is all part of a larger allegation that Ukraine interfered in the 2016 election?
Yes, that is my understanding.
And to your knowledge, is there any factual basis to support the allegation that Ukraine interfered in the 2016 election?
To my knowledge, there is no factual basis, no.
And in fact, who did interfere in the 2016 election?
I think it's amply clear that Russian interference was at the heart of the interference in the 2016 election cycle.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.